Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has met with Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and other officials on a visit expected to focus on security, investment, and Ethiopia's dispute with U.S. ally Egypt. Prime Minister Abiy welcomed Pompeo and his wife on their arrival. Then they went into lunch. His visit comes as some African governments are questioning U.S. President Donald Trump's commitment to the continent. Investment opportunities as Abiy opens up the economy to foreign investment, and a dispute the United States has been trying to mediate between Ethiopia and Egypt over Ethiopia's giant Blue Nile hydropower dam. Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous nation, has long been an ally of the United States, but the difficulty of doing business is sluggish and bureaucratic economy has discouraged foreign investment. We have now joining us on the program VOA correspondent Simon Max to discuss more about the meeting. Thanks, Simon, for speaking to us.
Yes, hi there.
Talk to us some more about today's meeting between Prime Minister Abiy and Mr. Pompeo.
Yes, well, obviously, Secretary of State Pompeo arrived here on a mission to really reinforce American interests in Ethiopia. He really underscored support for Abiy Ahmed's reform agenda. It's something that interests the US. They see lots of opportunities here in the future, particularly as the economy potentially opens up. He expressed a lot of support for the election process. He really encouraged Ethiopia to embrace the elections in August, and obviously touched on trying to reinforce security partnerships in the fight against al-Shabaab. I think those were the two sort of big issues addressed.
Yeah, and about the election that you were talking about, that was a major issue, the upcoming election in Ethiopia. This election is like a vote of confidence on, the prime minister. How does America feel about Abiy Ahmed, contesting for this election?
Well, when you speak to diplomats around Addis Ababa, it's very clear that the Americans have picked their candidate silently. They might not come out publicly and say it, but they back Mr. Abiy Ahmed. He very much is in line with sort of values and the democratic system that I suppose America would stand for. And really, should he not win, I would say it's going to upset a lot of people back in Washington.
All right. Another pressing issue is the subject of the Nile Dam, between Ethiopia, the dispute actually between Ethiopia and another U.S. ally, Egypt. The last meeting in Washington, to resolve this ended in a deadlock. What did Mr. Pompeo have to say about this? What did he have to say about this?
Well, yeah, Mr. Pompeo was asked about that at a press conference just now. He was keen to say that this was not about the US imposing their wish on any country, despite it having very good relationships with Mr. al-Sisi in Egypt. Quote, said many of the elements from an agreement are now moving closer to finality, but there is still work that remains. And then he also said that while he's optimistic for a deal, he did sort of caveat that with saying that this would happen in the coming months, whereas in the past we've heard that this should be achieved this month. So in a way, there's a lot of positive rhetoric around this deal, but in actual fact, it seems that there's quite deep divisions between the two countries.
All right, Simon, just before I let you go, this is Mr. Pompeo's last visit in Africa before he moves on to the Middle East. And his visit comes as some African governments, they're questioning President Donald Trump's commitment to the continent, especially recently when he announced the recent travel ban on some African countries that includes Nigeria and Sudan. Talk to us about America's commitment to Africa. Did Mr. Pompeo speak on that?
Well, I think you've touched on a bit of a sore point. He's really here to reinvigorate America's strategy or presence on the continent. But obviously, I think a lot of African leaders are looking at him rather skeptically. There was indeed pretty harsh visa restrictions that came as a big surprise. And many of these countries, they have their issues, but they're certainly, I don't think, exporting land terrorism or anything like that. They're trying to deal with it internally in their own ways. There was also a lot of sort of baggage related to comments that Mr. President Trump has made about Africa, derogatory comments. And I think really, if you're looking at America competing with other global problems like China, most American leaders really lack, African leaders really lack a sense that America has a deep long-term strategy with the continent, something that China's had now for years. And they're sort of a bit expectant of America to come forward with something that's a win-win and not just sort of playing out its sort of power struggles with other regions, be it Russia or China.
All right, then VOA correspondent Simon Marks, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thanks.
Well, previously, the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Angola, where he praised President João Lourenço's efforts in combating financial crime, saying the damage it had caused to Angola was pretty clear. Well, relatives of Angola's previous president, notably his daughter Isabel dos Santos, are currently facing investigations over their wealth. Also, Mr. Pompeo prompted U.S. investment as an alternative to Chinese loans, while assuaging concerns over a planned U.S. military withdrawal and the expansion of visa restrictions targeting 4 countries.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is aiming to promote U.S. investment as an alternative to Chinese loans while easing concerns over a planned U.S. military withdrawal and the expansion of visa restrictions targeting 4 African countries. In Angola's capital, Mr. Pompeo met with President Lourenço, who took office in 2017, promising wide-ranging economic reforms and a crackdown on the endemic graft that marked his predecessor's 4-decade rule. Angola, with sub-Saharan Africa's 3rd largest economy and its 2nd largest oil producer, is ranked as one of the world's most corrupt nations, in 165th place on a list of 180 countries, and that's according to anti-corruption group Transparency International.
Corruption is the enemy of nations' growth and progress. Here in Angola, damage from corruption is pretty clear. I spoke with the president today. I was unabashed talking about the work that he's done.
Pompeo announced a $2 billion investment in a natural gas project aimed at benefiting American businesses and Angolan people.
We've got a group of energy companies going to put more than $2 billion into a natural gas project. It's fantastic. That will redound to the benefit of the American businesses for sure, but to the Angolan people for sure as well. This reform agenda that the president has put in place has to stick. It has to continue. If we get that right, collectively, there'll be more deals. Financial institutions will return. All the things that will drive jobs and wealth creation for the Angolan people will be in place. We'll do our part to help the Angolans achieve prosperity.
Despite U.S. investment, the bulk of Angola's oil production is destined for China, which holds the lion's share of Angolan foreign debt.